Hello, welcome. I'm Roxy Hunt. I'm one of the festival directors of Lower East Side Film Festival. And today we have the filmmakers and the subject of Mentally Al, a documentary that is going to be part of our 2020 program here at Lower East Side Film Festival. It is our 10th year, but it happens to be virtual this year. So I'm really happy to have you guys join our virtual Q&A.
Honored to be part of the first virtual.
yeah, first annual virtual. And I was saying before that I love your background, Josh. Great representing of the film. Make it an official press junket. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. So I've got Josh Edelman, the director, and Al Lubel, the subject, and co-writer, producer. I know there was.
At the end of the credits, I give him a writing credit because he complained during the filmmaking.
Right. Well, tell us, ideally, whoever's watching this has just watched your film, but just give us a little logline description of what the film is, kind of get into it.
It's a film about Al. It's about what I think, I think we all sort of see the glamorous side of stand-up. Most people who are like fans of comedy are fans of like Joe Rogan's and Bill Burr's and Jerry Seinfeld's, and they see like that world. But there's a whole other world of brilliant people like Al who, go through sort of a daily struggle, I think, of trying to succeed. But also, I think, it just delves into further things about like what it means to truly pursue your dreams. And also Al's just such an interesting, I've wanted to make the documentary for over 15 years before I made it, just because I thought he was one of the most interesting people I'd ever seen in my life. And just, everything he says is interesting.
Well, I don't know if that's true. You've seen me order a tuna fish sandwich. I don't know how interesting that is.
It's very interesting the way you order a tuna fish sandwich. You're incredibly watchable.
I would agree with that. So Josh, tell us how you said you wanted to make this film for so long. How did it come to be, and how did you get Al on board to be part of this film?
Well, the funny thing is I discovered Al when I was around 15 years old at just a comedy club in Boca Raton where I grew up. And that's kind of the moment that like sort of it blew my mind. I was like, how have I never heard of this guy? He's the funniest person I've ever seen. And I would just like, I let my comedy club know, like, let me know anytime he's in town. And every time he would come, I would go and see him. And I think when I was 17 or 18, I actually, after one of his sets, came up to him and asked him if I could make a documentary about him. And he said no. And then about 10 years later, I'm in Los Angeles and I see he's performing in LA, and I'm like, oh, let me go check it out. And I check it out and I send a tweet. I tweet at him. I say like, hey, Al, saw your one-man show, thought it was great, would love to collaborate on something with you. 4 years after that, I get a message back from him on Twitter saying, hey, Josh, this is Al Lubel. I just realized I have a Twitter account and saw your message. Thanks for coming to the show. Would love to meet up if you want to talk about it. And then he still wasn't interested in doing a documentary, but we had talked about making a special, which we still want to make. And then I kind of pitched, well, what if we make like a little tiny documentary with the special, like, to help get people to know who you are. And then once we started filming that, it just kind of took off and became the whole thing.
And Al, what was it like, the process, having Josh following you around, filming all this stuff? Were you ever, concerned about what this film was going to be or how you would be portrayed, or?
Not really. I wasn't. But looking back on it now, I think I should have been. Not because it's bad, but I realize it could have, not bad. Well, it's very well done, but it could have been a very negative portrait of me too, because everyone has a negative side. And I remember during it, Josh said, don't worry, I'm doing a thing.
Well. Let's be clear. I was doing an accurate thing, but I think you're a positive person. I think there's plenty of your dark side in the film.
There is.
What's funny is I don't think you were ever afraid of me showing anything negative. You were only afraid about the documentary ruining your screenplay.
Right. That's true. Yeah, well, because I've written a screenplay about myself for the last 20 years, and it's finished, but the screenplay is about my character. It's not me specifically, but it's based on me with my issues going through a situation in life, but it's all my issues. So I was afraid to have my issues appear in the documentary like that. I think it takes away a little from the movie, a little. And so I was always worried about that because people before that wanted to do documentaries on me, and I always passed on it. But it was, every decision's really hard for me. It seems like big decision. And so it was agony for me to turn down the other person that wanted to do it. Like I remember being tortured with, what do I do? And luckily through life, I've realized there really is no answer. You eventually just have to do something. You don't even have to do something, but that's a choice too. But it's not worth the torture, that I would put myself in. Anyway, my point is, I think to a certain extent it does take away from the movie, but not as much as I thought it would. It really doesn't, because the movie has a story to it. It's not this story. And so my fears were over-exaggerated, so I'm glad I ended up doing it. But it could have been, I think like you said, Josh, at the end of the question answer in Los Angeles, you said, I'd like to make another whole other one about other parts about you. But you could have just chosen really only the negative things and done like a really mean, try to be super negative. You could have if you wanted to. And that never entered my head that you could have. I never thought about that. But, and who knows? Maybe I'm being negative now. Maybe I would have even liked that. I'd gotten a kick out of, look how bad I look. There's a part of me that would have liked that. So, but I didn't. So I like to think I think of all the negative possibilities, but I really don't. I didn't really think of all the negative things that could have happened.
But I think that like an interesting aspect of you is you say like, I could have shown all these negative things, but I think something that's so interesting about you is that you're negative. And again, Al, I don't think like people watch the movie and go, I want to be just like that guy. Right. But I think that a lot of what you perceive as negative qualities are also very endearing qualities.
By the way, that's because it's never been shown in prisons.
Yeah, that's true.
But no, that's true. You have shown negatives about me, and that's true. I don't mind that at all. I like that. But you could have just only shown negatives if you wanted to, or almost only. It could have been even, and that I never even considered that you would.
Why would I try to take you down, Al? No one can take you.
I know. Well, that's why I wasn't worried about it. But I think, what was the question? The question was, did you have any concerns? I didn't really, because I trusted Josh, and I do have a gullibility. I do have, I guess, one saving grace for me in a way, is I do get mistrustful if I think about things, but my inherent thing is to trust people. Because I was such an only spoiled child, since you saw the documentary, I think there is a native thing in me where people are out for my best interest, just because I was overindulged as a kid, which was not healthy. But the fact is, I was indulged. And so I have this like unconscious feeling that people want to indulge me, So I think I trust from the beginning, but which can be a good thing, at least I just, but when the second I start thinking about something, I immediately find a lot of the reasons why I shouldn't do anything.
Al, also, I wouldn't totally agree 100% that you had no concerns, because I feel like getting started with the documentary was a real challenge. You kept putting it off. I kept being like, come interview you. And you kept I felt like a very, like an intense anxiety from you about starting.
Oh, okay. That's interesting, because I don't remember. I think, yeah, but it wasn't like a conscious, like, oh, I'm scared to do this. It's just the way I am with everything. I don't want to begin anything.
I think that's.
Ideally, I'd like to. If I had the money, I'd like to do that cryogenics thing, where you're frozen, because I like the idea of just being frozen for a long time. Because that's how I feel now, anyway. You know, my instinct is to be frozen. So I hate starting anything, you know? So yeah, you're right. I'm sure I put you off, and it was unconscious. It wasn't conscious. It wasn't like, uh-oh, not ready. I don't think I was consciously afraid of it, but I'm sure unconsciously I try to avoid everything.
Well, it's interesting that, I mean, obviously the film is so much about measuring success. What does success mean in your career and everything? But I'm curious too, Josh, for you as a filmmaker, what role does this film have in your success? Or were you questioning your own career? Or, you know, are you wondering if this was the right move to advance yourself as a filmmaker?
Well, I think I mean, absolutely, you know, there's nowhere for me to go but up. But at the same time, I think, you know, one of the most interesting moments of the film for me is when I interview my parents when Al's staying at my house. And I asked my dad, like, you know, my parents are extremely supportive of my decisions. And you know, I feel very fortunate to have that. A lot of people don't have that. But at the same time, you know, my dad's very much like, you know, went to school, went to graduate school, became a doctor. Like, he thinks along those lines, and he sees me out here trying to pursue creative field similar to Al. And I ask him, like, does, you know, having Al stay here, seeing Al, does that make you nervous at all for me? And he talks about, like, you know, feeling confident in me, like being willing to do X, Y, and Z. At the same time, I'm sitting there thinking, like, Al's reached heights of success that I haven't even come to yet. He's been on Johnny Carson. He won Star Search. I'm like making a self-financed documentary right now. Yeah, I mean, you know, I think a big thing about Al is that he's in so many ways my greatest hopes and biggest fears in one person. That's like I see Al creatively as everything I want to accomplish, and everything that's most important to me in, like, pursuing an artistic career is to be true to myself, to maintain my creative integrity and authenticity. But, you know, there is, like, a fear of what that means on a more shallow perspective of success, it's definitely something I think about and talk about a lot and meditate.
So to translate what you just said is, shallow perspective success means I don't want to end up where Al has ended up.
Well, you know,
isn't that the translation of my shallow perception of success? I really respect what Al's done, but God forbid I become Al.
Al sees through everything. That's Al. He's got. That's what makes him such a great comedian, is the way to see through all the bullshit. Well, yeah. I mean, you know, it's definitely jarring for someone who's a 15-year-old kid that sees this comedian that he looks up to and is like, this guy's a brilliant genius, and sitting there assuming to himself that because he's such a brilliant genius that he's you know, living in a really nice place and has lots of money and all of this, and then growing up and learning that, like, one doesn't mean the other.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just the clue on that should have been that I was playing the Boca Raton Comedy Club.
But I didn't know that. To me,
yeah. Somewhere where they let in a 15-year-old.
They serve me beer too. They're closed.
Well, what's been the journey of the film now that it's, you know, in festivals and things like that? Is there a new trajectory of success for either of you, or, you know, what's the path been after the film's been finished?
Well, getting it released. We're hopefully in the midst of making a deal right now. So,
congrats.
Thank you. The next step is really getting it out there and upping Al's profile. But at the same time, you know, through making this, I was always shocked how many people did know who he was. And it was always interesting. And anyone who knew who Al was immediately like, I saw that guy 10 years ago and I've never forgotten it. So it's interesting, but I think so I'd almost say almost more reminding those people Al's still here and introducing him to some new ones.
And where are you at now, Al? You're in London, right?
Yeah, I'm in London, and yeah, I like it out here, but of course, comedy stopped everywhere, and so it's depressing that comedy has stopped, because it was the one thing that gave me some structure. Although I think that it's better. I'm happier here where comedy stopped, rather than being back in the U.S., because England's a different world for me. I've been out here this trip like 3 years, and so being in a different world is a little more stimulating to me. It feels like I'm just doing something just by virtue of just being in a different world.
Since the end of the film.
What? Yeah, and at the end of the film, I ended up here, and but I have learned the thing about myself is I've never done much unless there was a structure to it. Like I had to perform that night, so I want to at least have. I learned the hard way that if I don't at least have like a little idea of a joke to try, then I'm going to be depressed performing just the same stuff. So gradually, I do a little work before the show, just because I want to have something to try. But now I don't even have that pressure of the show coming up, So, and I have a tendency to being very lazy. Like an ex-manager pointed out to me, a lot of his comedians he represents are very inherently lazy, and I am too. And I guess this COVID thing has taught me that I had no idea I could actually accomplish even less, I had no idea. I mean, like I thought I was accomplishing this bare minimum, but I actually have found I do less than I ever imagined I could do.
You were built for this pandemic, Al.
Yeah, but it's depressing to me because there is that part of me that is ambitious, but it's an intellectual idea in me that I want to be. I have that in my head. You're the best, my mother was. You're the greatest. You're the best. So I got that in my head to be the best, but it's an idea that completely conflicts with who I am, of who doesn't want to work for it. Because I listen to that guy Jordan Peterson sometime, that what is he called, an intellectual or something? Anyway, but he talks about conscientiousness is a great big trait for success, and energy, two things I don't have. I mean, conscientiousness and energy, and those, I don't have much of those things, so caffeine gives me a little, but then I get GERD, gastro reflux. So it's like, I feel like I'm dying of complications as I live. Complications have thwarted me. I get the caffeine for the energy, but then I get GERD, I don't have the caffeine, I don't have the energy. And it's just like, there's so many obstacles. But one thing I just like to say because I felt, if anyone wants to invest a couple of $1 million in this movie I've written, I am saying that I'm interested in that. Because maybe people are out there thinking, maybe people do want to invest. I think it's a very good script, actually, that I've written. And if someone wants to invest the money, but I must say, I'll tell you right up front, because coming from the background of being a comedian, the one good thing about being a comedian is you're your own director, your own producer. You don't have to, I don't try my jokes out on anyone before I go up. I don't want to hear their opinion. The audience will give me the group opinion. I don't want to hear one person's opinion. I used to do that. It was a mistake, I think. One person's opinion, I don't care how funny you are. One person's opinion doesn't mean anything to me. I need the group reaction, okay? So the same thing for the script I wrote. I will hear people tell me what they think. I'll listen to it a little, but I'm going to be the ultimate decider. So I wouldn't want any producer would give me 10 million for the movie. I wouldn't take it if it means he's going to tell me he wants this scene adjusted a little. No, I'll hear his advice, but so it would have to be in the contract that I have the final say. I want direct control, even though I've never made anything, never made any movies. I know a lot of these creative people have final say if they've done a few things, but I'm at the end anyway. This is probably going to be my final movie anyway. So I want final say now for my final movie.
It's hard to believe you're not more successful, Al.
Well, what if Josh was the director?
I was thinking of Josh, and Josh might be one. He expressed some interest, maybe, but again, I think I want to be like co-director, or at least, but I have to have final say, because I'll hear anyone's great ideas, but I have a vision I wrote the thing, so I have a vision in my head for what I want to see. And I think even though I have no experience directing, I know what I want to see. And I think through trial and error, I could figure it out, or I could just talk to a camera person and say, this is what I want to see. Can you make that happen? You know, so if someone is willing to direct the movie, they have to, I feel, be okay with me having final say, because then it's not my vision, it's the other person's vision. You know, I'm willing to hear, you know, comment, criticism. Fine. If you can have an idea that's better than mine and I like it, I'll use it. Fine. But I don't want anyone else having final say, because that's like in comedy, giving someone final say over my joke. No, it's my joke.
Well, then how was it edited? I mean, watching the film being edited and seeing what came out of this documentary, did you feel like...
I'm very unhappy. No.
It's funny the way I negotiated with Al to get final cut on the doc without him having any say over anything was I told him, what if I discover you're a serial killer in the middle of filming the movie? Then I got to make the documentary about how you're a serial. I can't have you telling me I can't do that. And
what? Would you listen to a serial killer?
Well, if I contractually had to.
Right. But no, I forgot you gave that example, but you're right. I mean, but I knew that is Josh's project. He was creating the documentary, and then I'm fine to let him do whatever he wanted to do because it's his thing. But I wrote the movie, you know, so that's why. But that's why I guess, yeah, you're right. I wasn't worried about what he did because I guess I respected it's his thing, you know, and he do what he wants.
Well, it sounds like you guys came to a place of really being able to trust one another, and that doesn't sound like that's an easy feat. So I commend both of you guys for kind of, you know, lending your expertise to each other and to make this film. You know, with the it being such a personal project, and even, you know, Josh, I know it's not about you, but obviously it was a very long process and a lot of your personal time went into it. Did you guys feel like by the end of it there was some, you know, cathartic experience, or were you able to reflect on this, you know, close that chapter, go on to the next, you know? Did it provide any kind of resolution in any way?
Oh, well, I mean, the process of making it was very cathartic. I mean, I often feel like, you know, spending all this time really trying to find the through line of Al's character. I mean, I think Al is so interesting because I think he's an extreme version of most people. I think like the thoughts that Al has, the amount that I think his neurosis comes from being just hyper aware of who he is and who kind of we all are, like he was just doing the I'm the best, his mom telling him he's the best. I think that's a thing that people genuinely feel, and Al like I think represents that. As far as completion, I mean, I'm still, you know, we're still in the process of trying to make the deal to get it done. It's been a 5-year process at this point for me. I have a joke where I say that like a lot of people talk about their film like it's their baby. I think of mine as the adult man-child. I'm ready to move out of the house and stop costing me money. I'm ready for it to be out there earning its own money.
Right.
You know what, I kind of like the idea, but I do like the idea kind of that the situation the movie's been in for the last 5 years, or with the last 2, because I think the movie itself represents me, that it's struggling.
But it's finding a home, Al. It's finding a home. It's not just living on my couch anymore.
It's funny, and like for me, I was trying to find a home, struggling for a while, but I feel bad now. I feel guilty. I said that, or bad, that like I'm saying I'm happy that the movie's struggling. But the narcissist in me likes the fact that the movie I've infected the movie in a way. I like to think that part of my problem has infected the movie.
Well, it's all very meta, you know. I mean, I think the fact that even watching it too, you can see that in a way, like, you know, just to continue carrying on too might have been there. I mean, were there a couple parts when you're filming when you, Josh, were just like, I think we've got enough, or what made you keep wanting to keep going? You know, it was a really long process. When did you decide, okay, this is done, this is the movie?
Well, I think I mean, the main crux of the film. I mean, we shot stuff before and after this, but Al kind of had dates to perform in Atlantic City, and then he was visiting his mother in Florida, and I was like, this is kind of the moment to capture, to kind of go with him on this journey, see like sort of the life of the road comic, have Al, go and see his mother, where so much of his material and personality stems from. So like once we had kind of shot that journey, that was like the bulk of the movie. And then there were like some sets we did, a couple of interviews we did after the fact, seeing where things turned out a year later and beyond. But like I said, I feel like there's as good of a sequel documentary to everything that happened in the movie as the movie. I think there's also so many more aspects of Al to sort of show.
Can I just say this, Josh? I don't think I'm that different than a regular comedian. I mean, regular comedians, other comedians have these kind of issues: the laziness, the mother issue, da. Right? I mean, all these comedians, aren't we all like that?
True. But I guess what's more interesting about you is, I'd say, one, at least in my opinion and many others, you're one of the funniest comedians. So it's like interesting to explore somebody who has those issues and is able to translate them very clearly. I don't know. I think, yeah, a lot of comedians have your issues, but I don't know if that many have them to your extremity.
I'd like to think so.
I mean, in the film it comes across too, like you said, Josh, like that, Al, you're very self-aware. You're talking about this stuff. It didn't seem to be a surprise to you to delve into some of these topics about success or failure, or all these kinds of things that maybe that I think is something that sets you apart, is that you're very willing to look at yourself in that reflection and kind of deal with it, instead of some kind of denial of or path to success that doesn't include that,
or look at it, not deal with it.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. I think part of it's that I've been in psychotherapy for a lot of years. I was going to start again here recently, like a month ago. I started online with doing on like what's it called, the cognitive behavioral therapy thing, CBT. But I didn't follow through on it. But in LA, I was doing it a little, but I had many years seeing psychiatrists, psychologists. So I was a psychology major in college. And I think it's the narcissist in me that likes to talk about myself, so that's why I know it, but I'm also happy to talk about it. But I also like trying to be honest. But I remember a shrink once said to me, he's never seen someone so self-aware, yet so refusing to change at the same time. And I was thinking, I'm aware of that.
Sarah Silverman says that in the movie.
They said, yeah.
He's so aware of all his problems, yet unwilling to do anything about them.
Well, it's a combination of intellectually being aware, but emotionally terrified to change.
Paralyzed.
So it's what?
Paralyzed by fear of changing it.
I'd like to think so.
Well, I don't want to take up too much more of you guys' time. I know we're in different time zones, and you probably have lots of things to do, but
I don't.
But I really want to thank you guys for having this conversation in this weird virtual festival world, pandemic life. So I really appreciate it, and I'm really excited just to hear more about the script that you wrote, Al, but also too that this film is in a potential deal. Keep us posted. That sounds really exciting, and I'd love to get the word out once it does. So congrats on that. And thanks so much for being a part of the festival too. And like I said, this will go live along with all the films on June 18th. and everybody can watch it there and enjoy the film as well. I'm going to do a little sign off, but I'll stay on too because I just want to be a real human and thank you guys. But I'll do my official goodbye. All right, everybody, thanks so much for joining me today. Again, this has been Mentally Al, a documentary directed by Josh Edelman, starring Al Lubel. And thank you guys so much for joining me today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roxy.